Without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our program. So first of all, we are undergoing kind of long-range plan exercise because our landscape architecture also have urban design, environmental design under the same roof of we call lauded program. And so this is kind of our kind of new structure. And we're going to rebrand this, our program, because our landscape architecture program in undergraduate degree has been over 45 years, and our master's program started in 2010, I believe. So it's MLA is relatively recent, but our MUD urban design degree has been a couple years old as well. And before we start, I do want to acknowledge ASU is located on the ancestral land where the indigenous people communities of Audubon and the people are here. And I always say that, we want to acknowledge the past harms that was done and really recognize that history in order for us to design a better and a just future. So this is only the first step when we can start doing that. And I want to say our landscape architecture program in the field of landscape architecture is encompassing a very wide range of knowledge and practices, and we consider urban design, environmental design as kind of part of this larger umbrella, because landscape architecture, urban design, environmental design together really is trying to understand the relationship between the people and the nature and our environments. And there really is the integration of arts, science, and technology together, and how we can resolve those wicked, that complex issues, and to really try to address those and complex challenges like climate change and systemic injustice, and how we can work with community towards sustainability and resilience. And at multiple levels, thinking globally, acting locally. And I do want to mention just the recent, you see that in November, which the COP27 just finished a few days ago. And the Biden-Harris administration in the White House in the US announced that nature-based solutions is one strategy, right? One of the strategies to fight with climate change, strengthen community, and support local economies. And this is, the nature-based solution. There is a public definition, but essentially is how we use ecological design and how we strengthen the ecosystem services, and in order to resolve social issues. So basically, landscape architecture, urban design, urban design, we are the profession that are fundamentally is applying the nature-based solutions. So we really see that our profession is going to be taking the lead on really addressing those really emerging issues on the climate change and work with community. And an example of how American Society of Landscape Architects, which is the national or organization for all the profession in the landscape architecture, we just launched this climate action plan and really dedicated to how our profession should play a critical role in addressing climate change. And there are three big actions. One from the practice, right, how we address climate change mitigation, and then also how we reduce the impact of climate change about the adaptation. And then there's also equity part is critical, how we work with indigenous community, how we can work with community in general to really address those issues, and also how we become advocates in various levels, starting from individual to the firms, to how you work with community. So I think we really see our profession really play a critical role. And I'm honored to be serving on the Climate Action's Plan Advisory Group in this effort. So we just introduced our faculty. Paul and I just introduced ourselves. And we also have our full-time faculty here, Professor Yiwen, associate professor, has been with ASU for nearly 30 years. And we have Elise and Christian, they're both alumni of ASU, and they are great professors teaching as a clinical assistant professor. And then we have a lecturer, Dr. Simulaski. He has a PhD in geography, so he teaches GIS and teaches a lot of fundamental class for both environment design and landscape architecture. And we have recent hires of Tanner Christensen. Actually, he is also our BSOA alum and has been teaching with us on critical sound fundamental classes as well. And we have a new lecturer joining us in spring. We are very excited to have Giselle Major joining us, and she's bringing her very critical expertise in community design, and she's a licensed landscape architect and in state of Washington. She's currently working in Seattle and a registered landscape architect. And we have fantastic professors who recently retired, but still be our great resources in the background. And so what is landscape architecture? I think our mission really try to emphasize how we incorporate the knowledge skill sets and also rooted in our values to achieve sustainability and the other challenges we are facing in the 21st century to design healthy, equitable, safe, and resilient environment. And so we really want to create the positive change. I believe that all the practices we're doing, it's not only zero carbon or zero impact, but actually making positive change to our environment and with our communities. And we want to strengthen that MLA is a STEM designated program. So but for some, especially international students, it's also important in this explanation. Now let Paul to introduce MUD program.
Sure, thanks, Qingwen. Hi, everyone. So in terms of the urban design program, the urban design program is really, again, educating new urban design leaders. The big thing with urban design, much like landscape architecture, is bringing together different collaborators. So that's kind of a skill set that you'll develop as you go through the program, not only for collaborations, but also the spatial design skills that are really critical for understanding how to create really vibrant public spaces between buildings. One thing about the MUD, unlike the MLA, it's not a STEM designated course, unfortunately, but we are in the future hoping to get it to be a STEM designated course. Next slide. So we have together, both the Masters of Landscape Architecture degree and then multiple pathways there. So we have a 3-year, which is actually the degree that I have in my background. I actually came into landscape architecture as a meteorologist, so I had no background, just science. And then we have 2+ and then a 2-year pathway for those folks that have a undergrad in landscape architecture. For the Masters of Urban Design program, what we've done is we've reconfigured this. So we're actually in our first year of having students go through this, which is a 3-semester program, which is a fall, spring, and then a summer session. So it's a more accelerated program than the landscape architecture program. And again, one of the reasons why we can do that is because urban design is not an accredited degree and landscape architecture is. And so our landscape architecture curriculum has to meet certain standards in terms of the amount of education you have there. And then we also have some other programs at the design school that also are, I would say, complementary to the landscape architecture and urban design program. One is a Master of Science in Design. It allows for, it's a non-studio based degree, really allows you to dig into some of the issues that you would work on with the design degrees, but in a way that's more about creating a research project. And then of course, as well, a PhD in design, environment, and the arts. That really also is a much more robust way of actually doing research in design. One thing that we should mention there as well is that you can also do concurrent degrees, and we're happy to talk to you about those concurrent degrees as well. So one thing that we're really proud of is the fact that our laboratory is our city. We live in an urban ecosystem that is really unique in the world, and we also are engaged, and you'll see in a few minutes, in some of the kind of groundbreaking science on urban ecological systems. And you can think about urban ecology as just, when we plant plants, doesn't matter what they are, native, non-native, nature responds, right? And so we are in that business of understanding that from a human perspective, really thinking about how communities make meaning from the plants that they plant, and how that then affects the nature and natural processes in our cities. Next slide. We also have a really great relationship with our professional community. I will say, I went to the University of Michigan, and I don't remember ever really interacting with any of the alumni or the professional practitioners in that community. And here we have a really close community. This is Steve Martino, one of the more famous landscape architects in our region. And we often have into studios, certainly for reviews. And then we also have through our ASLA, which is we have actually a student chapter. They're actually also engaged really in a robust way with our practitioner communities. Next slide. And then, as part of the program, we do have requirements in terms of internships. And again, because we have those existing relationships with practitioners and professionals, we also then have opportunities when there are internships, and we have something called studio nights that we put on every year, where we match. We have the professionals into the studio to basically learn about the students and then sort of match for career development, but also for internships. Next slide. And I mentioned earlier the American Society of Landscape Architects. We have a student organization that's really active. This is one of their sketch crawls that they organize every year. And again, with some of the local practitioners. And so we actually have a really robust educational program in sketching. Tanner Christensen, who you saw earlier in the faculty, is an amazing teacher in terms of sketching. And so we do have that opportunity to really focus on hand sketching and hand renderings, and in a way that is experiential and rich and helps, I think, add to your skill set in terms of a designer. We also have a variety of different faculty that that take students as part of what's called a study abroad or global learning experience. Now, these are outside of the program, so these are actually kind of separate from the program, so they're not required as part of it, but you can do it. They actually also count, it's complicated, but they do count for internship credit. And they also are, and you can get it for 6 credits for these particular ones. This one here is Elise Hargrove. She takes students to Mediterranean cities and landscapes, and you can see typically it's sort of the eastern side of the Mediterranean, from Italy over to Croatia and then to Greece. Are typical kind of things. Now this switches from year to year. She sort of switches it up, and in this one you do focus a lot on sketching and sort of visiting different landscapes and experience. The next one is one that I actually participate in with Jose Bernardi. Jose Bernardi is an interior architect professor. He's been actually doing these tours. I know it says I've been with him since 2015, but he's been doing these tours for 25 years. So he knows everything about everything. When you go, he's just an encyclopedia. So this next summer, we're going to be going to Barcelona, Paris, and Venice in this May of 2023. And this one also, we kind of switch it up every year, but this is really focused on everything from the interior of spaces to the sort of space in between the interior exterior, so entrances and things, and then out into the landscape. And I also focus on urban design as well. And you can see this picture of Paris that is a great laboratory for that. Next slide. We also, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Tingman. Sorry, turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so we have a lot of our studios focus on working with community. That's what we call the service learning studios. And we really strengthen that opportunities, how we can serve and embedded socially impact in the community. That's also kind of ASU's value as well. So in the picture we show this in Hawaii. It's urban design and the landscape architecture students together in the studio, and visited the Honolulu and work with community there to redesign their park and really strengthen how we can learn from the community, listen from community, and go where the communities are. So this is actually in front of the ice cream, well, the local ice cream, the local shaved ice, yes, yeah. Shaved ice shop. In the middle is our senior students and working in the South Phoenix. And if you know about or heard about Phoenix, South Phoenix is a segregated zoning in the past, so it's kind of redlined practices and have systemic injustice in the past, and so there's a lot of work can be done there. And this semester, I'm also working with South Phoenix community and I'm teaching the graduate MLA students and also MUD both cohorts together to work with communities on how to address heat, urban heat island issues, and the transit-oriented development to ensure that the community can be empowered so they will not be gentrified, and also to address the environmental and environmental justice issues. And the other work earlier in Poe's studio also work with the researchers in ASU. I think that's also one of the strengths that we bring in the research communities and all kind of experts together and to participate, work with our students, and to really help to develop the solutions that is founded in science and also from the community's needs. So one of example of success is our award-winning project from the studio. And this is the one we work with a charter school in the South Phoenix. And again, we bring in the students to conduct those activities to help to gauge the community's input and back to the drawing board. And in addition to all this science analysis, and then develop those solutions, really try to illustrate, how the landscape architecture and urban design can really work and function to address those issues. And so this project, we won the EPA's Campus Rainworks Challenge second prize, and then the student also entered a Arizona Chapter ASU Community Service Award. And we have a very vibrant and active design research in our school, in our program. And I am directing Hydrogen Lab, and it's really looking at how the nature-based solutions in the design processes and outcomes, how we can assess the performance and to understand how green infrastructure, how those design strategies works in our arid climate environment. And Dr. Cosio has the Sonoran, the green roof laboratory, and it's really on top of our building. So it's a great it's learning environment right in our building, right in our program, and to really see how those the green infrastructure, how the plant material works and on the roof condition. So one example, we work with the ASU University landscape architects, and we help them to document the landscape performance. And this is the first Sustainable Site Initiative certified project on ASU campus, the second one in the state of Arizona. So, and we received the funding from Landscape Architecture Foundation. And so I was able to work with our MLA alum earlier to work on this project. And we also did an experiment. Again, we want to understand, right, how our plants and soil functions in this type of climates. And so this is an experiment. We collaborate with Flood Control District of Maricopa County in the Durango campus, and we work with master students, and also sometimes we have undergrad students joining as well. So it's a really collaborative and interdisciplinary program. The more recent another landscape performance work, I have another MLA student work with me this year to document and this one I work with SWA group. It's the practitioners to help to document their landscape performance project in El Paso in Texas. And another project I work with is the Local First Arizona, and they are local NGOs, and they have this called Scale Up program to work with local businessmen. And we work with the stakeholders and try to identify, what are the sustainable development goals for the local business, and develop this tool and to help them to assess, evaluate, how can they achieve the sustainability goals in terms of social, ecological, and economic benefits. And I'll let Paul to talk about CAF.
Okay, yeah. So one of the kind of larger projects where both myself, Dr. Cheng, you can see Elise Hargroves on there, Christian Kelly, and Nick Smolowski. A lot of our faculty are engaged in this really large project, and I'll put it in the chat. Oops, actually, I did not put it in the chat. Let me do everyone in the meeting. Let's do that again. There we go. So there's a link to the website. It's called the Central Arizona Phoenix Long-Term Ecological Research Project, and it's a National Science Foundation project that's been running in Phoenix since the late 1990s. So it's a really long project that has looked at, again, going back to sort of the urban ecology of the region. And, I think for us, urban ecology is just another name for landscape architecture, essentially. And so it's really investigating, nature in cities. Here's an image, and this is sort of connected to the work that Dr. Cheng was talking about just a second ago, the Orange Mall, and really sort of monitoring these types of projects to really understand how, how they work. And you can see our research question here is really around, governance and institutions, but, certainly like professional practice is our key players in this. And we have lots of people in practitioner community that actually help us with this particular project. And I'm a co-lead on this with Mike Chester, who's an engineering professor at ASU, does really amazing work on his sort of agile infrastructure, thinking about adaptability to climate change and resilience. Next slide. So the projects that we work on are really throughout the valley. So you have ASU Tempe campus. You saw the Orange Mall there. That's one example of it. I work really closely with the city of Tempe. We've worked with the city of Mesa, city of Phoenix, and a lot of different entities. And so there's opportunities both. Sometimes we have some funding to hire students, and you saw Dr. Cheng show that with some of the MLA students that we're working with her. There's also oftentimes opportunities for you all to do some of your schoolwork related to these projects as well. So we have a lot of relationships if you want to have sort of more real world experience in terms of the design that you want to do, and really impacting how the region is changing in terms of thinking about more progressive, sort of sustainable and more resilient types of urban and ecological design. Next slide. One of the ones that's been going on for several years now, and Dr. Cheng showed the student work that won the Campus Rainworks Challenge from the EPA was Paideia Academy. This has a team of researchers that have been working over the last at least 3 years or 4 years with this charter school in South Phoenix that is a majority non-white and a lower income community to really actually naturalize their playgrounds. We've actually built projects there working with students, and you saw the MLA students do that earlier, but also with Norris Design was one of the design teams that was actually hired to do the work, and then they actually implemented the work. So, and when this continues, actually, we're still working with that, and the lead is from the School of Sustainability, so we work with Jenny Van Oss on this particular project. Next slide. Edison Eastlake is another project that we're pretty proud of. It's a redevelopment in Central Phoenix. And one of the kind of key things here is that it was a series of researchers that came together to understand the challenge of heat in many of the neighborhoods that are low income. The city of Phoenix also got a housing and urban development grant, $30 million. And we partnered with them to basically lead a series of workshops to do and basically come up with this heat action planning guide, but we're still maintaining relationship with the community and also the city of Phoenix. We have a long-term monitoring there, so we actually monitor the air temperature and other meteorological variables in that neighborhood. So, and they're in the process of actually building much of the design right now. I've also worked with students to do something called EnviMet modeling, where you take basically the air temperature that you've measured in the neighborhood, you sort of test the model on it, and you're able to put in the design in it to see how the new design will actually influence air temperature and other meteorological factors in terms of microclimate. So will it make the neighborhoods essentially hotter or cooler? And so we were able to sort of answer those questions, but now we're able to also continue to actually have our weather stations there to actually monitor whether the model is good too. So lots of interesting opportunities for that type of research, design research as well. Next slide. This is a project in the city of Tempe that I work very closely with. It's actually funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So it's a global ideas for U.S. solutions grant. It brings together climate change, equity, and health in this space. And it's called Cool Kids, Cool Places, Cool Futures, where we do grassroots organizing in high schools to organize youth into councils and groups. We link that in with city government to make space for those voices in the city government, and then try to also connect that in working with other cities. So like, for instance, we work really closely here with the and the new director of the heat preparedness and mitigation department, the city of Phoenix, actually is on our project. And so we work at a regional level too to sort of try to move the needle on both policy related to extreme heat, but also I think importantly for us, design, and how do we design better cities that are just cooler and more equitable. Next slide. And then there's also sort of larger regional efforts. This is a 58-mile stretch of the Salt River that the ASU has been helping to facilitate conversations with the cities along it on how do you actually transform the Salt River that has a few public parks. Tempe Town Lake is one of them, but there's other ones that are more ecological. There's also the Rio Salado Restoration Habitat Area and the Audubon Center. How do you start to stitch those together so that we have a continuous greenway from Granite Reef Dam all the way out to Buckeye? And so this is a big project that we've been involved with. We've had studios that have looked at this particular stretch as well, in terms of also connecting our students in all of these things you see in terms of trying to connect them into impact in the region. Next slide. We also are really trying to advance the types of tools that we use as landscape architects. So certainly, GIS, geographical information systems are a critical piece when you're doing really large landscapes like the Rio Reimagined that I just showed, but also combining that with the use of drone technology and other pieces to sort of pull that together. Nick Smolowski really leads this for us on, again, thinking about what are those cutting edge technologies that we need as designers to be able to do better work. Next slide.
So maybe I take on.
No, go ahead. You can talk about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we do have fantastic alumni, and we are proud of having the community making impact in our community. And these three outstanding alumni, just examples. Christine and Kobiek, when she was doing her master's project, she lives in the Central Park in the South Phoenix. Actually, that's also how I connect with her with the studio I showed earlier. And she really noticed that, well, why there was not many trees in the South Phoenix neighborhood, and the air pollution was so serious. And so she really helped to get funding and empower the community and to greening their own neighborhoods. And so she was awarded for the outstanding graduate from IDA in 2018. And Laura Martins, she's an alum, the first cohort graduate in the MLA program, and she has been a great. She has registered in California and Arizona, and she worked in California a couple of years and came back to start actually teaching as a lecturer for a couple of years. And I also have her own practice. But this year, she got a new job with the city of Phoenix, and which is probably the first officer like for urban forestry manager, and in the heat ready office in the city of Phoenix. And I think this is the kind of first one of the kind of city municipality efforts to address heat in the nation, or maybe even in the world. And so we were very proud of Laura is serving in the city right now, and she just awarded with the ASU the service award. And because she also organized, funded the DEI committee in ASU, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. And Valerie Ahong also graduated in the same year as Laura, and she is just passed her baton as Arizona chapter ASU president, and she has been very active, since she was a student, involving with student chapters, and both of them actually became the woman in landscape architecture scholars recent years. Well, so ASU is very proud. We are the #1 in the US for innovations. For it's more than, since 2016. I think we have this position since then. So it's already 7 years, 6 years in a row. And just very briefly about application process. The part 1 is ASU college level. You have to go through that, and the second part of slides room, you have to create your account and then upload your portfolio and all the material, and that's how our faculty will review from the slide room. And the application already started, and the priority deadline is January 15, but of course, the sooner you can apply and finish, the better you can start reviewing.
And I think can I say one thing?
Sure.
So just in terms of the portfolio, because certainly, like, I, as a non-designer, applying to my program when I was back then, I was a little intimidated to do that. I think one of the things that we recommend is just any type of creative activity that you have, whether it's painting or photography, or we've even had people submit cooking portfolios. So anything that shows your creativity and shows a little bit about your personality, that's something that you could submit as part of it. So don't be intimidated by the portfolio. It's just a part of the application process that we want to sort of see in terms of trying to understand you better and kind of how you'll fit for the program.
Yeah, and I will also elaborate a little bit more about those 3 pathways. So our 3-year program is for people who have no design background at all. So yeah, Jared, like yourself, sounds like you will be eligible for the 3-year program. And so again, you can just provide any kind of your inspiration, and that will kind of suffice for the application. The 2+ year pathways for people who have a design program, design degree before, like architecture, environment design, planning, kind of related degree. And especially if you already have a little bit background on the application, like CAD and Adobe, etc. So because that's kind of first semester, you will learn all that kind of tools. And the 2-year program is more strictly for people who already have accredited BSOA programs. Yeah. Okay, so for any more question about the process of how to apply, please contact our graduate coordinator at the designgrad.asu.edu. And you can also visit our office. If you have more questions, more about curriculum and the career path and what this profession is about, feel free to contact myself and Paul. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And yeah, please like us and follow us, and to get the most updated news in our social media. And we'd like to open for any questions you may
have. Thanks for this, super informative, and you all kind of anticipated one of my big question marks, not coming from a design background. The portfolio kind of gives me trepidation. I've told you I've been in legal compliance, like my educational background is law. It could put you to sleep with, my professional output over the years. And, I just wanted to get a sense. It sounds like, any creative outlet, things that inspire you and kind of your design process. I shared earlier, I've been thinking about the portfolio as I consider applying, and I'm taking landscape architecture courses and have work product. Essentially it would be like first year student work product. And
Oh, that's great.
yeah, see, and I was curious like about the sort of whether that'd be relevant. Part of me doesn't want to display my sort of amateur
Yeah.
first year stuff. Okay, so that would be kind
Totally.
of okay.
Yeah, that would be actually very helpful. To know you already, start learning about this, already thinking or practicing a little bit. That would be all very helpful for us. Yeah, to understand where you are at and your interests.
Okay, great. Thank you. And sorry to kind of monopolize.
Yeah, no
time,
worries.
but I'm curious too, I would be sort of someone pursuing, a second career, older student, I've already kind of had one professional path and switching. And I was curious whether, that's something you all see in the 3-year
Yes.
program. That's not uncommon.
No, that's very, very common.
Okay.
It's very common in our profession, in education. We see a lot of people, and the MLA 3-year program really particularly designed for people who want to switch career, change majors, and this is your really second chance to do that. So yeah, no, we have a lot of students coming from different backgrounds, and which is very helpful because people are having the different background and strengths and bring into the landscape architecture. We think is it's a plus, it's a bonus to our profession. Because as you can see, our profession is really, ranging a lot of different fields. You can work at a large scale, planning, work with the city, but you can work with the neighborhood community, or you want to work with really side, like, specific location or projects. And you can be focusing on ecological issues. You can be focusing on social issues or integration of all this, right? Law is critical too, like regulations. And we always talk about, what prevent us from doing nature-based solutions, right? And how we can empower people and the policymakers, how we communicate. I mean, a lot of discussion from our students end up with, all right, how can we actually, let more people come together to understand the value of our profession and how we can work together. And we do need a diverse interdisciplinary expertise and people from all kinds of, walks of life to really work together, because our challenges, such as climate change, this is complex. We cannot work alone. And so all this expertise will be very super helpful and can strengthen our profession. And Angela, I know you emailed me about taking classes. I have not getting into the logistics yet. If you can just take classes in the studio, but we are welcome to visit us. And even you can come to our final review this semester. I can send you some information, so maybe at least you can already see, how the studio, what kind of products, and you can also talk to our faculty and students to learn more. If that's something you are interested.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to ask about that, because, yeah, I know you've kind of brought up some different like side projects that like the groups have worked on, or yeah, even just going to reviews, I think could be really helpful. But yeah, thank you for that. If you can send me when the reviews are, or if there's any other events that might help me get an idea, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and we can also introduce you. One of our MLA students actually has civil engineering background.
Oh,
and
really? Oh,
she,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, she's in our MLA second year right now. So I can also introduce her to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you. Because, yeah, I know a little bit in this session has helped a lot, but I still, yeah, think I need to do more research before I like commit to a program or anything.
Well, you already got almost touching on all the architecture,
Yeah, no,
civil
most of it-
engineering.
yeah,
Now you are lacking is really landscape architecture.
that's true.
Then you
That's
can
true. It would
really do
complete the circle.
everything. Because I always talk to people about our profession. We all collaborate working with other professions, especially civil engineer and architects. Every
Okay,
project,
yeah.
in the real world, we always work together. So yeah, you already know the other two, then this you can be you can do everything by yourself
Okay, yeah,
almost.
that's very
Yeah.
reassuring. Thank you.
Richard, do you have any questions? Did you say you are coming from Hungary?
Yes, I did,
That's great.
but I think I will do a gap year now.
Mhm.
But later on, sure, it was really interesting, and yeah, I have to think about it.
Yeah,
It is a big step to go from here to there, and
yeah.
I also kind of don't know how this US college system work.
Mhm.
So I have my job
Yeah.
to do.
You can you can contact me maybe offline too. I was an international student, so I know that process. So I can also direct you if you have any questions about how you study overseas.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Any other question?
I think my kind of remaining questions are probably more for the grad coordinator, so I'll kind of hold off and schedule a meeting with them. But thank you both.
Okay, you are very welcome.
Yeah. And I put our email addresses in the chat. So, and there's a few other links in there too. You might want to copy before we end. So.
Okay, great. If yeah, Angela, you have any?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I don't have any other questions either. But yeah, thank you for all the information that you guys gave in the session. It's been really helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time and before the holidays. So we wish you happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and hope to see your applications, and feel free to reach out to us in any time. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.